Imagine spending your whole life as the most honourable swordsman alive, and then waking up in the body of the most loathed, most depraved villain in the entire martial world, with his sins already stapled to your name. Here is the question that runs underneath every chapter. When a genuinely good man is poured into the body of a monster everyone else already hates, a spoiled, vicious heir to a death cult, does he scrub the reputation clean? Or does he realize that being feared as a lunatic is the single most useful weapon he has ever held? By the end of this recap, you will know exactly which choice he makes, and why it turns him into something far more dangerous than a hero. This is I Reincarnated as the Crazed Heir, and I'm going to walk you through the whole story, beginning to end. Let's get into it. To understand the body, you first have to understand the soul that lands inside it. His name is Jagak Yang, and in the orthodox martial world, the so-called virtuous sects, the alliance of righteous schools that style themselves for the moral spine of the land, he is as close to a perfect hero as the world has ever produced. They call him the 10-strike finisher. The title is not poetry, it is a measurement. Whoever stands against Jagak Yang, however gifted, however celebrated, falls inside 10 exchanges. No 11th strike has ever been required. He is the son of the leader of the Great Martial Alliance, the grand coalition of upright sects, which makes him not merely a prodigy but an heir, the man the entire orthodox world expects to one day inherit its leadership and carry its banner. He is talented, he is principled, and he is, by the relentless logic of that world, doomed, because the martial world, virtue and brilliance, do not earn you allies, they earn you envy, and envy among men who can kill with a touch is rarely content to stay in the heart. Jagak Yang is poisoned, assassinated quietly and cravenly, by rivals who could not beat him inside 10 strikes and so choose not to fight him at all. The greatest swordsman of his generation, the future lord of the righteous sects, is murdered before he is even 30, not on a battlefield but by men who smiled at him and slipped something into the dark. That is how the hero's first life ends, with a betrayal so petty it is almost insulting. And here is where the story performs its single, cruelest, cleverest trick, because Jagak Yang does not wake up reborn into a kinder world, rewarded for his goodness with a fresh start. He wakes up on the wrong side. He opens his eyes in a strange room in a strange body, in a place soaked through with a kind of power he has spent his entire life being taught to despair. He is no longer in the orthodox world at all. He is deep inside the territory of its great enemy, the demonic cult, and the body he now wears does not belong to a hero. It belongs to the single most detested young man in the entire blood-soaked organization. Remember the 10-strike finisher, hold on to him, because the man everyone is about to meet wears his face over a reputation that could not be more opposite. But the tragedy is not why this story works. Watch what happens when the most discipled soul in the martial world has to answer to the worst name in it. The body is called Cheonso Ma, and in the demonic cult, the Shining Light cult, a sprawling, feared, mountain-rooted order in the righteous world regards as the very source of evil in the land, Cheonso Ma is not a nobody. He is the heir, the vice leader, the son of the cult's leader, the second most important young man in an organization that armies are afraid of. He is also, to put it gently, a disgrace. The previous Cheonso Ma was everything Jagak Yang was not, spoiled rotten by his bloodline, drunk on a status he never earned. He was a womanizing, gambling, brawling wastrel, handsome and useless, cruel for sport, talentless despite every advantage handed to him from birth. The cult tolerated him only because of his father. Everyone, from the lowest acolyte to the highest elder, privately regarded him as a stain on the bloodline, a crazed, unruly embarrassment who would one day either get himself killed or drag the whole order down with him. He had, the story tells us with great relish, nothing going for him except his face. So picture the collision. Jagak Yang, orthodox, ascetic, principled to the bone, a man who built his entire identity on honor, opens his eyes inside the single most dishonorable shell available in the entire world. He is surrounded by people who hate him on sight, who flinch from him, who whisper about him, who are waiting for an excuse. He cannot announce who he really is. No one would believe that the saint of the righteous sex is hiding inside the demon cult's spoiled brat, and saying it aloud would get him dissected. He is a good man wearing a villain's skin, in the heart of the place his old self was sworn to destroy. And then something quietly remarkable happens. Jagak Yang does not panic, and he does not preach, he observes. He is, above all, a pragmatist, a man who learned a long time ago that survival in the martial world is a game of information and patience. He studies the body he has inherited, he studies the cult around him, and he begins to understand the situation with the cold clarity of someone who has fought 1,000 duels. He is alone, he is hated, and he is surrounded by killers. But he also has two things the old Cheonso Ma never had. He has the mind, the discipline, and the buried martial genius of the 10-strike finisher. And he has a reputation so spectacularly bad that absolutely nobody expects anything of him at all. The second thing he realizes is not a curse. It is camouflage. Now here is the hinge the whole series turns on, and it is genuinely delicious. A normal reincarnation hero dropped into a hated body spends the story desperately trying to prove he is better than his predecessor, clearing his name, winning hearts, becoming respectable. Jagak Yang does almost the opposite. He looks at the legend of the Crazed Heir, unpredictable, violent, utterly without restraint, and he realizes that a reputation for madness is the most powerful piece of armor a weak, isolated man can wear. If everyone already believes you are an unhinged lunatic capable of anything, then no plot against you is safe, no insult is free, and no enemy can ever be quite sure how far you will go. So he does not erase the persona, he upgrades it. He keeps the swagger, the menace, the air of a man that one wrong word away from doing something terrible, and he pours into it the precision, the technique, and the absolute self-control of the greatest swordsman of his age. The old Cheonso Ma was crazy and weak. The new Cheonso Ma is crazy and devastating, and that combination terrifies people in a way mere strength never could. The early going is pure, glorious fish-out-of-water comedy and menace braided together. The cult's elders and rivals, sensing the heir is as pathetic as ever, move to exploit, humiliate, or quietly remove him. Every one of them gets a horrifying surprise. The vice leader they wrote off as a drunk suddenly moves with impossible economy, settling confrontations in a handful of strikes, exactly as a certain 10-strike finisher once did. Though no one alive could connect those dots. He outthinks schemers who have plotted for decades. He repays cruelty with a calm theatrical ruthlessness that reads to everyone watching as the unpredictable malice of a true madman, when in truth it is the disciplined judgment of a deeply moral man choosing his battles. Because that is the tension the whole series lives inside, and it never lets go of it. Jagak Yang's principles did not die with his first body, he is still, underneath the performance, the honourable man who was murdered for being too good. He will not slaughter the innocent, he protects the weak within the cult, the overlooked, the bullied and the disposable. He repays loyalty. He spares those who do not deserve death, but he does all of it while wearing the mask of the demon cult's most dangerous lunatic, which means his genuine acts of mercy are constantly misread by everyone around him as some deeper, more sinister scheme. They cannot conceive that the Crazed Heir is being kind, so they assume he is being clever, and in fearing his non-existent cunning, they hand him real power. He gathers people, slowly, a blunt, fearsome bodyguard sworn to his side, subordinates within the cult who begin almost against their will to feel something they never expected to feel for Cheonso Ma, respect, and then loyalty. Members of the Ya family and others in the cult's orbit who orbit closer as the heir reveals, drip by drip, that he is not the joke they were promised. He is building a faction inside a den of vipers, and he is building it on the foundation of pure, deliberate misdirection, letting the legend of a madman do the work that an open display of virtue never could. But the cult intrigue is not the deepest layer either. Watch what happens when the man who was once the heir of the righteous world has to stand inside the army built to destroy it. This is where I reincarnated as the Crazed Heir sharpens into something more than a comedy of misread menace, because Jagak Yang is not an ordinary defector or a simple turncoat. He is, uniquely, a man who has lived as the heir of both sides. He was raised to inherit the Great Martial Alliance, the coalition of virtuous sects, and now he is poised to inherit the Shining Light cult, the demonic order those sects exist to oppose. No one in the history of the martial world has ever held both of these futures inside a single soul. And what he discovers, looking at his old world through his enemy's eyes, complicates everything. The righteous sects who lionized him were riddled with the same envy and cowardice that murdered him. The demonic cult he was taught to see as pure evil turns out to be full of ordinary people, frightened, loyal, mistreated, and human, caught inside a machine of fear. The neat line between good and evil that defined his first life dissolves the moment he is forced to live on the wrong side of it. The orthodox world is not simply good. The cult is not simply evil. Both are full of monsters and both are full of people worth protecting. So Jagak Yang stops fighting for a side and starts fighting for a principle. And he does it from the least likely throne imaginable. He begins to reform the demonic cult from the inside, and not by softening it, but by aiming it, curbing its needless cruelty, purging the genuinely rotten elements who prey on the helpless, and turning a feared death cult into something, of all things, with a code. He does this while maintaining the Crazed Heir mask the entire time, so that even his reforms look, to outsiders, like the terrifying consolidation of a mad tyrant rather than the quiet conscience of a murdered saint. The martial world reacts to him exactly as you would expect. A martial world to react to a rising power it does not understand. Rival factions probe him. The orthodox sects, his old family among them, watch the demonic cult's strange new heir with mounting alarm, never dreaming that the man unsettling them is the very hero they themselves failed to protect. Within the cult, the great demonic lords circle, figures of immense established power, the kind of men who have carved their names into the world with blood. The heir who was once a punchline is now a piece on a board crowded with killers, and every one of them is recalculating what he is worth and how much of a threat he has quietly become. And through all of it, the central question the open loop promised keeps tightening. The man inside the Crazed Heir is good, the reputation he wears is monstrous. The more powerful he grows, the harder it becomes to tell where the performance ends and the person begins. He is using the madness, but a mask worn long enough has a way of pressing into the face beneath it. The story is keenly aware of this danger, and it lets Jagak Yang feel it, the constant lonely strain of being the only person in the world who knows that the demon everyone fears is, underneath, the hero everyone betrayed. So what is Cheonso Ma really? That is the question the whole series is built to answer, and the answer is the most satisfying thing about it. He is not the spoiled wastrel whose body he inherited. That man is gone, burned away the moment a better soul took the wheel, but he is not simply Jagak Yang resurrected either. The 10-strike finisher was a creature of the orthodox world, bound by its rules and ultimately destroyed by its hypocrisy. The man who walks out of this story is something the martial world has never had before, a leader who carries the honor of the righteous sex and the freedom of the demonic cult at once, beholden to neither, loyal only to the people he has chosen to protect. The Crazed Heir grows into a genuine power, the technique sharpens, the buried genius of his first life resurfaces, and is refined against enemies who would have crushed the old Cheonso Ma in a heartbeat. He climbs the cult's brutal internal hierarchy, not by being the cruelest, but by being the most complete. The rare figure who is feared, respected, and by the small circle who truly know him loved. The mask of the lunatic remains useful right to the end, but underneath it the cult has been changed. Less a den of monsters and more a force with a spine and a conscience, pointed by a man who decides for himself what evil actually means. And the story never lets him off the moral hook. He kills. He schemes. He does genuinely ruthless things, and the narrative does not pretend otherwise. This is a demonic cult and he leads it, but every act of ruthlessness is weighed against the principle he died for in his first life. He will be feared. He will not be cruel for cruelty's sake. He will wear the costume of a villain, and he will keep, somewhere the world cannot see, the heart of the best man it ever murdered. That is the trick the title hides. The Crazed Heir sounds like a villain origin story. It is the opposite. It's the story of a hero too good for the world that made him, given a second life, in the one place his goodness could not be poisoned out of him, because everyone there already assumed he had none. He had to die as a saint among hypocrites, to be reborn as a demon among honest monsters. And only as the demon does he finally become free to be entirely, uncompromisingly himself. The absurd premise, the perfect hero wakes up as the cult's worst brat, is played here with total commitment. It begins as comedy, it deepens into genuine meditation on reputation, identity, and where virtue actually lives when you strip away the side you were born on. The madness is real, the honor is real. The miracle of the story is that the same man holds both, and never once has to choose between them. I reincarnated as the Crazed Heir, also known as Reincarnated as the Unruly Heir, began as a web novel by Dae Eun-ho, and was adapted into the Manhwa by Zaemu, with art by Jeon Ma. The original novel is complete at well over 400 chapters, and the webtoon continues to serialize the story for a growing international audience. It belongs to the same proud tradition as the great Murim reincarnation epics. The regressor dropped into a martial world and forced to play a game far larger than himself, but it earns its own corner of that shelf through one inspired inversion. The hero who is dropped not into a hero's body, but into the villain's, and who is clever enough and good enough to make the villainy work for him without ever letting it own him. If you've ever wanted a power fantasy with a real moral engine underneath the spectacle, one where the smartest move the protagonist makes is to let the whole world keep underestimating exactly how good he is, this is a remarkably rewarding place to spend your time. If this recap held you to the end, then subscribe. Because Manhwa Recap Vault covers the stories that define the genre, and Reincarnated into the Wrong Side Tale is one of the most satisfying twists the medium has produced, and I think Reincarnated as the Crazed Heir sits inside of it perfectly. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next recap.